through presentation and for you to help us with some feedback. There's just a couple of housekeeping items before I get started. And there's a sign-up sheet going around. And if you haven't seen this one yet, and I don't know if everybody has, I'll just, anybody else back here, just name and email. We're just trying to capture the list of people. So fill that in if you haven't. Mandy Pitts, our communications director, is always trying to build on the email list so that you can get our monthly city newsletter, and so that's one of the reasons for the list. And otherwise, it's just a way to connect with you again about the project. The restrooms are out into the hallway and down to the right, and for the men, it's down to the left. So if you need to step out, that is fine. And you have, hopefully, when you came in, you picked up a two-sided sheet and a pen. So if you don't have that yet, just raise your hand. One of us will bring that to you. Two-sided sheet and an ink pen. The format for tonight is a presentation, but it's also some interaction time where you give us some feedback to the questions that are listed on this sheet, and I'll go into them in greater detail. And we've collected these sheets from each of the 2 other meetings that we've had so far, and we'll do the same presentation and information gathering tomorrow night at Rotary Government Park. So with that, I'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Andrea Surratt. I'm one of the Assistant City Managers for the City of Hickory, and I'm honored to be in the midst of this crowd tonight. Thank you for taking your time on a Tuesday evening to come out and hear about this project. We really, really appreciate the input. And I want to recognize Sally Fox, our councilwoman here, and a couple of members of our Inspiring Spaces Committee. There's Don Norwood and Helgi Schubert. Am I missing anybody? Good. All right. And so you may have picked up a third piece of paper, and that's sort of a typed list. And James Rogers, has been one of our Planning Commission members in the past for the Hickory, and he's just summarized his thoughts in this sheet here. So you may have gotten that, and he just wanted to make a copy for everybody so you could sort of see what angle he's coming from. And so you're always welcome to submit more information. The last piece that you may have picked up is our brochure. So please take one. If you didn't get one, please take one on your way out. Share that with a friend or neighbors in my email, and contact information is on the back in the orange section. So if you think of something that you want to share with the consultants or with me and the committee as we're moving forward, that's a way to reach out and do that. So, I don't know about the lights. Can everybody see the screen well enough?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So we'll get started. So I'm going to take you all the way through beginning to end this process today, so that there may be some of you that have been in council meetings or in other meetings and have heard bits and pieces, but I'd like to just put it all into one big timeline for you. It really started over a year ago as City Council considered what they want to tackle over the next few years, and they do that through a retreat process where they sometimes are meeting in this space, sometimes they are traveling to other cities. In the case of last year, they actually traveled to 5 different cities for the purpose of connecting individually with leaders in those communities. And those communities had also experienced decline and then rebirth. And so those communities included Greenville, South Carolina, Asheville, Burlington, Chattanooga, and Roanoke. So that was an important first step. Just, when you were thinking about what you want to do, you sort of looked at best practices. And so these were some cities that had fallen on hard times, but had decided to work in partnerships to improve some strategic areas of their city. And now those cities are places that you might actually travel to on a short vacation, or go to, maybe there's a university there or something like that. So they have, and you remember them, because if you've been in certain parts of those cities, they have a really exciting, vibrant feel. And so Hickory Council wanted to look for that in terms of how can we bring some of that into Hickory as well. one of the things they learned was that public investment was made. And so these cities had gotten to a point where it wasn't just going to work just to say, well, when the business comes, it'll be okay. There was there's a partnership where the city and maybe other agencies like the state or counties had to go ahead and say, we're going to identify areas and fix them up in terms of redevelopment, buying properties, designating river areas to be related to park space again, and many, many options. So we learned about those, and we learned some ways to do that. They also all had great spaces for outdoor events, and not just one great space, but multiple in different parts of the city. So we always heard that that was a big, important part of a vibrant city, is that you have gathering places for people to come to. And in each city, we also heard that there are those who have been on the receiving end of many, many monetary blessings, basically, those philanthropists. And they have seen fit to give back to that community in ways that are in the form of, public areas that might be dedicated to a company or to a person, or, the things that you might think of that you would do for someone to memorialize or honor them. That also factors into ways to improve the city. So it's lots of different people making that difference. So in Greenville, the developer that did much of the work there, his name is Philip Hughes. He told this to City Council, and I'll just read it, so in case it's a struggle. It says, I started a business in Greenville in '91 when it was stagnant. A city has the bones, the structure, the character of buildings that are the heart and the soul of the community, and credit must be given to programming. So you have the bones there. You have the good buildings. You have the streets that are connected, and you may have ways to easily get in and out of those areas. But then credit must be given to programming in that area. And then cities have a responsibility beyond the fundamentals of safety, cleanliness, and things like underground. And must elevate to what the people want. So he was in essence trying to say, people want a vibrant area, and that doesn't just come with a handful of businesses here and there and a few neighborhoods. It requires people to organize and gather, and they need places to do that and also reasons to do that, so programming. So all of that information then council considered and met in this room and talked about it, and they felt like we needed to take this next step to create a plan that builds off of our existing plans, and that plan then they've named it the Inspiring Spaces Plan. And so you have the flyer there that outlines that in detail, but it basically is a list of construction projects that then is identified for all the different parts of the city, prioritized and dollars assigned to them, and a timeline set out for accomplishing those. And then it also includes deciding how those projects are funded. So that is really what you will see in the final document that we will get in April, is that laid out. So about the project, Plan Design is a international planning and engineering and architectural firm out of Charlotte, and they do a lot of work in public arenas as well as the private sector, and so they were selected to do this project. And some of the key things that Land Design helped us zero in on, and that council already knew they wanted to tackle, are just this list here. Additional sidewalks and bikeways, additional landscaping, our wayfinding. You might remember that project is sort of ready to be implemented, so we're ready there. Public art, fountains, splash pads, street lighting, street furniture, the redesign of some intersections that might include greenways. The list is long, and it can be about as varied as the people in this room are. Just many, many ideas can come out of this and fit into the plan. And this is the process based on that timeline in your flyer. We're in Phase 2, that's the community input section. So we're at the third of 4 public meetings. We've also done a series of stakeholder interviews with a lot of groups across the city to get their input. Because, you know, this is all about what we do in our time away from work. And so if you're a biker, if you like to go bird watching, or if you enjoy taking your kids or grandkids to a park, if you just enjoy being outside at lunch while you're working, then you might be impacted by this project, because those are the spaces that you're going to that we want to improve. And so we're getting this input, and then there'll be more chances to hear back on the progress that's being made. So the committee was selected over the summer, and they got started right away, met with land design, and have met about once a month. So this is the list of committee members. Just you might recognize a name or two there. Of course, Toby and Don are here tonight, and we thank them. So the group represents a broad spectrum of interest across the city. A lot of business owners there too. And then from that, then the committee, along with land design and some staff, went back to Greenville, because not all of them had seen that area that we had toured before. We also went to Rock Hill. And so what the goal there was just to zero in on some key similarities between those communities and Hickory. And in the instance of Rock Hill, they have Winthrop University there, which is a little larger than Lenore-Rhine University, but has the same proximity to its downtown and neighborhoods as Lenore-Rhine does. So we thought, and they've been working on improving, getting their college students into the downtown and having more activities that support both the college and the downtown in both places. The same thing with Greenville, just because of the streetscapes and the wayfinding and the public park spaces that they have created in Greenville, as well as a bike trail from Travelers Rest, well, just really about 10 miles down into Greenville, and it's about a 30 or 40 mile trail altogether. We looked at that as well. So we did that work. We're working on the strengths and weaknesses. Land design came to Hickory and has driven the streets. The group itself did a local tour and went through and looked at all the different areas and neighborhoods of Hickory as well. And so we come up with the citywide process for this list of projects. So after all is said and done, the list will be, because of the input that's been given, and will touch virtually every major area of Hickory. It's really not limited to one area. All right, so we're to the point where we would love to get some feedback from you. And this first sheet just asks for any additional goals in the plan. And so it lists 5, and there are actually 6, because the 6th one is being active. But if these 5 goals and the 6th one about being active if that meets your test for this project, then you can leave this blank. But if you can think of another goal that this project should try to accomplish related to improving the public areas and outdoors in Hickory, then that's where we love feedback. So if you have a particular interest for public art, or a particular interest for park space or trails, on-street bikeways, then list those as well. This is where you put the comments. And then that space at the bottom, just as if you haven't signed in already, if you just sign your email address there too. We're just still trying to capture as many names as we can to add to that email database. So let's go through the goals that are listed. The first and foremost is what we heard from other cities, and what is the most important here is to spur economic development. And what does that mean? Well, it means that where the improvements are made, there is a private sector response to those improvements that either improve certain parcels of property, or that those private owners or those businesses contribute to the project, or it's a key area that has great access to highways. It's going to spur additional construction for new businesses. So those are the kinds of things. We need it to be related to jobs and related to improving the business climate in Hickory. And what we hear from the Economic Development Corporation and all of their travels about our competition across North Carolina and nationally is we have to be focused on this one piece of the pie in terms of economic development. There are many pieces of that pie for encouraging job growth, but one we can't leave out is this ability to have a city that responds to what people like in terms of quality of life. You want to be, if you're in a company and you want to move somewhere, then you're going to hope that that company picks an area that has a lot of amenities. And Hickory has a lot, but this is the point at which we are feeling that we need more and we need to improve upon what we have. So economic development is important. We've got to grow this tax base. Okay, so then a lot of you may have participated in other plans over the last 10 years or so, and some of those plans are, or all of them are being considered, and some ideas from those plans are being funneled into this document. So if you participated in Hickory by Choice or City Center or Kenworth plan or any of those plans that had a list of projects, the consultants are considering those as well as hearing the new ideas. All of this is to improve the city's image as you drive along the streets and as you enter the area from the highways. We're trying to improve that image. What that does is it helps us have a greater amount of civic pride for our community. Because, you know, we take a pride in dressing up and sprucing up not only the public rights of way, the areas on each side of the street and in our public areas, then maybe private property owners will say, you know, I think it's time for us to do a little yard work, or maybe a business decides to apply for a grant to get some help with landscaping or facade improvements. And it helps to spur all of that along. And it's creating a sense of place. Now this is a term that planners and some architects use that you may have heard before, but if you just think for a moment about some of the places that you've traveled to, or maybe it's where you grew up, or maybe it's a place that you had a job in a different city that you remember, oh, you love going to that particular area of town or that park or that you use that trail weekly. Those are the kinds of things that create a sense of place, that they come back to your mind over and over again, and you relate yourself that great experience you had with that place. And so there's an art to creating those spaces, because they require not only maybe the business side to participate with interesting restaurants or you know, things like that, shops or whatnot, but it also needs to have an area where no matter if you're spending $1 or not, you can be there and you can rest, you can socialize, you can read a book, or you can walk. And those create that sense of place, and that gives identity to that particular area, and then you remember that. And we need people to have that experience about Hickory. Now I'll just tell you, I had to go to a funeral over the weekend, and one of my girlfriends from college reminded me, she said, Andrea, we lived in Hickory in the mid to late 90s. And I said, oh, that's right. And she said, yeah, both my kids were born at Fry. And she said, and they're since now in Ohio, but she said, both my kids were born at Fry. We went to the Salt Block, and we went to the Science Center, and we ate at a couple of cute restaurants downtown at that time, and we spent some time just going around and being able to walk on the streets and be safe and things like that. She loved Hickory, and all of those things sort of resonated with her, that came back to her. And so there's another conversation that she said, you know, that Hickory has great streets and great places for things to do for children and adults. So all of this is is also to say we need to get out and not be in our cars so much. So how can we make Hickory more pedestrian friendly and walk a little more and maybe decide to ride our bikes? Maybe if it's not a great thing for you to ride on the street, maybe if you had an option off street. Those are the kinds of goals for this plan as well. You may have another one. That's what we want to hear about. If we've missed anything, then we would love to know where those gaps are. If it's related to, well, you know, it's hard for me to say. I feel like that list is a good start, but you may think of something else if it's related to gathering areas that you're familiar with that we want to ensure that we improve. So this is just a summary of the meetings that we've had, 2 so far at HPD and at Highland, HPD and Ridgeview Rec, and we're here at Highland tomorrow night at Rotary Eidner. We're headed then into a number of meetings over a couple of months, and that's so that land design has time to take this input and begin factoring that into some of their recommendations. So some of these are probably changing a little bit, but we have a meeting scheduled at the end of November for the advisory committee. Land design will be back in Hickory in December to do some of their work when they begin really doing the design charrette process, and we'll get more information out to the community about that. And then probably in late January, just because of how the holidays fall, they'll come back and host an open house, and that open house would be maybe in a space like this, or we'll figure out where, but it'll have a series of stations where you can talk to the different consultants and hear about their recommendations and then get more input on the project. So someone might say, well, I'm not sure really what the plan looks like, and will, how is it used? Well, it comes in 4 parts. Just has some written recommendations like you would normally see, and then it has some detailed sort of plan view drawings that are done through the computer that identify areas of town that have the project plan for them. Then it includes the estimate of probable cost, and so that's their best working information on what a project of, say they decide to recommend a greenway. Well, they cost out all the materials and labor and construction, and they do it as a snapshot in time, so it's not necessarily a final, but it's a good rough working estimate, and that's what we get from them. And so there'll be 4 projects that get that level of detail out of this plan, because it takes quite a bit to go through and really go ahead and flesh that out. Then we get just some renderings, some more sketch views that you can see. The bottom quarter picture there is a sketch of Statesville. So if you've been to Statesville in the last year, you've noticed how their Broad Street's been overturned and redone. That's just one example of a streetscape. Our plan's different than that because it really relates more to less about downtown and more about different areas of the city. And this is just more about the estimate of probable cost. All right, so let's just take a moment there. And if you have any more thoughts you want to jot down, just take that time and fill that in for the goals. Yes.
This is great to have this meeting. It's a shame there aren't more people here to hear this. I have no idea you put out a monthly e-newsletter.
Okay.
I certainly will sign up for that.
Well, now, if you've given us your email, you'll see it probably next month.
But I wonder how many other people in Hickory know that you do that. How big is your mailing? You have to know.
I think I've heard 2,000 before, but it's obviously, there's also the city snippets, so if you're a water customer, you're going to see that paper copy. And then the newsletter reflects a lot of the same things, but it has maybe different things, so that's a good point. It's not everybody, we'd love more people.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Could you print out a single page flyer that you put in supermarkets and banks and businesses saying, did you know we have a newsletter? Why don't you sign up for it?
Good. We can do
Because I
that.
think the more people know about these things, the more people will get it.
thank you, we're making a note of that.
And my second question is, on the economic development side,
Right.
obviously it sounds like you've done a lot of work in that area already. Have you had, or have I missed meetings where there are presentations on how the city is going to go out and attract
Business.
other businesses, I mean, not traditional standard textile,
Right.
stuff,
Right.
new stuff, high-tech stuff?
Well, we work with the Economic Development Corporation, that's Scott Millar and his staff that is funded through the city and county. And that would really be his presentation about the work he does each year. And so maybe, let's see, he would have done one in the summertime. And he does one every year annually. And they also have a planning retreat where they talk about, what are the key sectors of business to go out and recruit. And so high-tech manufacturing is one that, you see turbo coating and turbo tech and some of the other, Hunker, the German company, and some of those that are coming to this area because of our proximity to Siemens and Charlotte regional area, all those vendors there. So that's probably where the major job recruitment presentation happens, is through his office.
Does he make that presentation?
He sometimes comes to council, but and then they hold that annual meeting. But I'm sure the chamber hosts him a couple of times a year too. It's a good. Well, so we can ask him that question. We'll capture that and let you know.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the focus is on parks and outside activities. And
Right,
areas
just for
tonight.
this project. But you're right. I mean, there's a whole world of work and energy put into that part too. So not to say this is the only thing, definitely not. That's good, thank you. Okay, so land design, as I mentioned, came to Hickory and they traveled in around the streets and trying to figure out some of the character of Hickory. And so a couple of these pictures might look familiar to you, and again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there'll be much more filled in as far as character. But if one of the things you could really help us with, will be coming up, well, really it would be go on that front page on the goals section, is if you know of an area of town or a business or some sort of place that you go that really embodies the character of Hickory, then just list that on that front section there, and just put character beside that section that you're writing, because we want to make sure that we capture character of Hickory and that the consultants have been to all the interesting little pockets of our communities.
What about the historical districts that aren't necessarily registered as historical districts, but they are historical districts, and they need to be brought up? Or there's a lot of dilapidated homes that have been condemned that the city's sitting on because they're impending, because if it's a private sector owns the home, but they haven't been able to afford to keep the home up, it's been condemned, but there's a lot of condemned houses sitting around because the city of Hickory would have to pay for them to be torn down because the private citizen isn't paying to get them torn down. So there's a lot of condemned structures that need to be removed, and that would clean up the city too.
Okay, that's a good point.
And there's investment going on. I would think it'd be a good investment to take down some of the old structures that have been abandoned, because then that leaves area for new development, and especially in some of the older neighborhoods where garden areas could be put in, or memorial parks, and especially since there's a food shortage, that these larger areas may be put into community gardens where that actually brings in the people to get involved in their community because they're actively doing something positive and producing.
That's a great comment. So because this is the way we're capturing that information, we can put community gardens and
also, I helped restructure and rebuild Asheville back in the late 80s. And back then, what we had to do in order to even have an office or like a store space, we had to renovate ourselves. That's how Asheville got started, because those buildings were dilapidated. The Flatiron, Wall Street, Square in order to have any space. And, you know, I was a doctor and my friends, they had boutiques, things. We had to renovate our own space.
Right.
Once the movie lasted, the Mohicans came in at the Haywood and started bringing money into it, and then people thinking, oh, there's good one going on. That started bringing money, but we initiated.
Some of that redevelopment.
Yeah, and they saw that it was very artistic. We were very artistic at that, like, kind of spawned the era of bringing up Asheville again, but it was actually, you know, we did the work and we employed ourselves and we employed our friends, and that helped with the local economy as opposed to bringing in outside corporations that come in and they get the benefit, the monetary benefit, and that takes it out of the city. We did it ourselves.
Right. That's great feedback. Thank you. I mean, we're going to work on right now just the public space there, but at the same time, we hope that people are taking opportunities to use these older buildings to renovate them and doing it. I mean, that's the best way to do it. Okay, so with land design, they began to identify sort of a study area, and this study area has grown. So it's maybe hard to see, but the lines are just major corridors that are on the list for consideration. Some of those circles there are gateways into the area, and then just some sort of points of interest that help them navigate through Hickory. And so as they traveled through Hickory and as they met with the different groups, then they began to expand a little further east and west, and they created 5 different categories. They felt like Hickory's issues about improving our public space related to destinations, making sure we have good destinations and that those destinations are connected, not only with a driving way, but also potential pedestrian walkways or other ways to connect. And then also the corridors are spruced up and have freshened up landscaping and have nice street lighting and things like that. And that the gateways themselves, as you enter Hickory, that those then have maybe a new welcome to Hickory sign or have better lighting or landscaping even on the interstate, just off the interstate on 321 and coming in from Alexander County as well. We realized, that Hickory expands, even broader in thinking about how do people come into town. So there's a number of ways that they do. And so even coming in from Springs Road or up from Fair Grove into Hickory is yet another gateway in addition to all the ones already marked. So at this point, let's just take a look at the opposite sheet on the back. And what we are hoping you'll share with us.
This is, I don't know whether on your copy or not, but on this legend here, there's some areas I can't read to find out where they are on the map. The legend before, I can't read this legend.
Okay, it might. I don't have my glasses on either, and it looks
It's not my glasses.
It's not your glasses. It's your eyes too. I understand. It's a small map.
What area they're talking about, like
Right.
identify.
That map was just a placeholder map that just shows sort of Hickory in general, but it's not. It obviously is not.
There's no map that's readable.
It's obviously not meant to be a super detailed map to read. It's more just to be
There's ones I
visual.
can read, but there's, I'm just, I can go ahead and read it. Those areas, I can't.
You can't read the arrows. Okay, well, as I get through the PowerPoint, I think it'll be explained. So just hang on, and we'll go through. This is where you can stare at it on the bigger screen. So on this second sheet, then, a couple of items that we want to gain from you. If you travel into Hickory on a particular gateway, just make a note of that. And if it's not lively enough or memorable enough, then you can flag that. So which ones need improvement? And we all travel from different parts of town, so that's important to get a capture of where you come into town. It doesn't have to be an interstate or a busy highway. It can be a gateway into a neighborhood or into a smaller area. So that's important. So just gives maybe some cross-street information. And then which corridors that you drive around in Hickory, which ones just look tired or just might need to be freshened up a bit, or when you bring a family member or friend into town, you say, well, let's, this area's got some vacant buildings, a lot of what she just said about, we might need to take a few down. Or list those corridors if you have one that's pressing on your mind. The third item then, and we'll keep going through this, you've got plenty of time to work on it as we go through the presentation, are places that you go, destinations and open space. So on a beautiful day in Hickory, where would you spend your time outside? And why? Where would you go in the outdoors in Hickory and why? And then just give us some information, if you have it, about what would make that experience nicer at those places. And then if you've been to another city where you really enjoyed a part of that community's outdoors public park system or just public space, then list that. We can go and research that a little bit. So I'll keep talking, and we can work on that while we go through. So we really felt like these are the 5 key themes that for this particular project were the most important things to address. If we could just address the gateways into Hickory, wouldn't that be a major improvement for the traveling public to come and say, there's Hickory, exits, 126, 27, 28, I did that wrong. 25, 26, and 27, and then up and down 321. Think about, maybe Hickory could be remembered for some open spaces that you've been to, a public area. Maybe you played Frisbee golf. Maybe you enjoyed getting out into a canoe onto Lake Hickory. Could you do that more easily some way?
There's no public access to it.
Okay, good point. I brought that up for a reason. So that's one where we feel like Lake Hickory is a little bit limited. Would that be maybe you managed to get on Lake Hickory through a public access, but it wasn't easy. Would there be that might be a recommendation for ways to improve that space? So
that's something that Greenville, South Carolina does not have. They do not have Lake Hickory.
That's right. That's one of our assets.
It's a huge opportunity to leverage that if it becomes accessible to families that can't afford a boat or have other ways of getting on the lake. Huge opportunity. We have fishing piers that don't stick way out in the water, but go along the sides of the water. Rental paddle boat.
Paddle boat, right. That's a great idea.
It's a huge opportunity that people just can't take advantage of.
I agree totally. So just keep listing those. So destinations, just in general, where are the people and what creates those destinations? And they are all over town. And in many different neighborhoods. And then how do you get there? Do you always drive, or could you walk from your neighborhood, or could you take it'd be nice if you had a dedicated linear park or greenway to get from point A to point B. That's always something that might make that space even more utilized. So destinations, whether those are public buildings or outdoor spaces, or public universities, and in the case here, we have the North Rhine. And so how do you encourage interconnection between LR and the downtown or the Salt Block or Ridgeview or Viewmont, and how do those students move about the community and feel safe and run along those streets and say, let's go from here to here to here today because there's things we can eat lunch here and then we can do this here. How do we offer that? What's missing right now from those destinations? Salt Block is another one. They have 500,000 visitors a year. It'd be nice to know if and there's multiple activities on the Salt Block. So how can we better access the Salt Block from downtown or from Southwest Hickory or from LR? All of that. We talked somewhat about corridors. This is one of the nicer corridors, and so it has that appeal that says, okay, that sidewalk is is much further away from the street. It feels very safe, and you have those growth trees there. And so how do we recreate some of that? And maybe are there areas where maybe that's not achievable, that something similar is, or something that still calms the traffic? We'll give one example just of the Zelkovas planted on 127. So if you're at the library and you're coming down the hill and back up, and the tree canopy comes out over the 127, you sort of feel like maybe, I mean, it might be a slight feeling, but you might feel like, okay, I'll slow down through here because it just feels like they're, residential and the trees are coming out and over. And then when you get into Beaumont, then boom, it feels very stark, and then you feel like you should speed up maybe, or maybe you're trying to make the light. Yes?
On the corridors like this,
Right.
and there's residential property, they used to like take away people's front yards, like make their property, their parcels smaller.
Right.
But they were taxed the same. So would like developing and, corridors like this, would you just take the land from the homeowner, or do you ask them and buy it
In
from
Hickory,
them?
we would ask. That way, there's really not that eminent domain. I mean, that's just not something we practice. But you have to buy or ask for an easement, things like
So you
that.
just don't do it.
No. So, just thinking about our major corridors then, here's the list that is going to be considered in this plan, just at the corridor level, the major corridor level. There are quite a few on there. Most of them are coming from a place out of town and leading you in. And so they're often the first impression that someone has about Hickory, and they don't always have to be roads. They can also be corridors that are related to greenways. So that's a part of the plan as well. This is just one example of a greenway. And here's one example of a corridor that was listed there that, the consultants are just starting to think about. And again, I just emphasize this is just one snapshot. It's not the only project, obviously, but there's a connection there that might make sense from Lenore Run University down to the downtown. And then as they draw that map, it might go down to Ridgeview or down to 70. It might go up to Beaumont. It might go over to Oakwood. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Yes?
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What's different than the highway that's already there?
That just means there's a study. Nothing, it doesn't mean much yet.
Okay.
It just means they've identified that as a potential area for improvement.
Okay.
That's all it means. So here's what they saw. And you might have been in your car, and that's what you see driving down Main Avenue, headed west. You've got the railroad corridor, and you've got businesses right up on the street. You have a sidewalk, could that be improved? Well, yes.
I promise not to start the overhead versus underground.
No.
But
But
just take a look at where those power poles are.
Right.
There's many examples around the city where they're right smack in the middle of the sidewalk.
Right.
So I don't know how Duke Power can address that.
Well, so it's expensive, but and maybe in a couple of key areas it makes sense to take it under. It's part of the decision-making process that the community and the Inspiring Spaces Committee and Council will have to do is it worth those dollars? It wouldn't make that big of a difference. And so that's a good point. And so, just as an example, could there be bike lanes on this street? Now, and could that be, and you can't look at it like those are the curbs there today. You might have to look at it like there's other opportunities there. Linear park along the railroad may or may not be feasible. This is just showing you how they're going to start brainstorming, and then as we go to the open house, they'll have a lot more information. So that was corridors. Here's gateways. And so gateways, we've already talked about just coming into Hickory from many different areas. But there are some really interesting gateways just into neighborhoods. And Clinworth has one of the great examples of that. And you may just give direct directions to your friends and neighbors or your family coming into town, and you might even describe a gateway. And that it has a special meaning in your mind. Well, that's what we're talking about. And just even when you think of Kenworth, you know, does this visual image even come up at all? But at least you know you've arrived there. This is just another study map of the gateways off the interstates, and then also off of 321, coming in from Springs Road, and then 70, gateway into downtown there from Fullback Court. So just talking about 321 for a moment, you know, and it is a plan on the, that will be, it is a roadway that will be improved over the next 10 years or so into a different type of highway. And so there's some opportunities to partner with DOT there and improve that gateway into Hickory. Because right now, you know, McDonald's has obviously done some landscaping and some grass, but it just has a very stark feel. So maybe what could soften that up while still moving the traffic? Here's another example. This is El Sombrero restaurant, the old one, over at LR at the X. And so when you're there, yes, at Highland Avenue, are you constantly worried about how far into which left lane you're getting into, so that you get far enough over so you can get back? And so that's, you know, all of that needs some signage potentially, or just, you know, that's just a general opportunity for a gateway over into the LR area down Highland. Because Highland has its own character even apart from LR. If you think about just the businesses that are going along there, the bungalow homes that are there, there's some really interesting things along Highland.
I'd like to thank you for repaving Highland.
Oh,
It's much improved.
We worked on that one for about 6 years before I left.
It's much safer now. Thanks.
You got a bunch of abandoned buildings and a bunch of rusty trailer parks on Highland. So as you go further down there, you go, man, wow, boy, that's just wrong.
Now, it has room for improvement, doesn't it? But, you know, what would some landscaping do, or what would some, you know, I'm not even sure what the recommendations are. That's part of what land design.
Hey, have you already got your areas picked out, it seems, that you're going to be working on?
Well,
Or is this a community vote, or what? Or
well, this is your chance to say, what have we missed? And so if you have an area that's not listed as a major corridor, hopefully we captured those. If you have a gateway area that you're familiar with, that you want, you know, please pay particular attention to such and such an intersection. It has great potential, or we just need that feedback from you.
so on like an intersection like that, you're talking about the signage, it's like, yeah, this, I mean, I came down there today looking for the pit,
Right.
you know,
It is.
but I kind of knew where I was going, but
Okay.
you wouldn't like tear down the building, would you, like, you know, add some trees and things like that? Or are you
No.
talking about like going to the cost of ripping out
No.
the road?
No, Chuck would kill me.
Just signage, like,
Some signage, some landscaping.
would that be like overhead
I
hanging?
don't know. And that's where
Like, who makes those decisions?
well, I think that's part of the planning process. Recommendations come from the consultant, and then we get,
The main company.
yes, the
makes the
design.
recommendations.
Right, but they're going to take your input. So if there's a particular issue that's you want to address, I think that's the time to share that. And so these are just a few more gateways. So in other words, in corridors, just thinking about even all the different ways that we travel in and around Hickory. So these are some quotes from the committee, just to give you a perspective on what they're thinking about. They feel like landscaping will enhance a lot of the properties at those entry corridors. And they're thinking, if you think about, let's just say you take exit 125, for example. So Lenore Ryan Boulevard off the interstate. And, you know, you come off that interstate and you're right there, trips and melon mushroom and Starbucks and all that, very busy and lots of traffic. What could be done, we're thinking about what could be done to soften that up or to make it more inviting, like welcome to Hickory. You know, that's just one example. There's hundreds of decided, well, they could have left that just to mow all the way to the curb, but they decided that screening and beautification and just something pleasant to look at when they sit on their porch was just as important as the ease of having too much yard to take care of. And they spruced it up. And so even, and you know, I'm talking about just, you know, just what they did here, just to soften the view of the cars and give the motoring public something nice to look at too. You can take that same application and think about it at the regional commercial level. And so.
The problem is there's no sidewalk from that. You know, walk the street.
You do. So, you know, maybe it's on the other side. So, yes.
And, well, this is one thing, because I am a homeowner here in the Kenworth area. You know, I've been really trying to get that area up, but it's very expensive. All the cost is gone on me. You know, I'm burdening the cost, which I've been to a council meeting and then I watched and I've kind of been reading things of how business owners get grants to help with their facade and landscaping. Like, let's say that person there that owns that home, was it to their cost that they beautified their lawn and the gateway to Hickory to that neighborhood benefits because they beautified the property, but it was at their expense?
It was, I'm sure.
So that's what my concern is like, I have pumped my life into Kenworth, you know, a lot of money into that. And so I was wondering if there would be a balance of like homeowners that are making a difference. Are there grants available for them to beautify their property, or do you have to actually just be a business? And, you know.
That's a good question. I think the answer is there are adopt-a-spot areas I think that residents can take up and improve. But as far as a grant to do landscaping on your own residence, I'd say no.
Yeah, because see that, you know, I mean, they beautified the area, but that was to their expense, where other areas that are going to benefit from this, you know, there's going to be money put in the neighborhoods and they're benefiting from it. And they're not coming out of their pocket, where like other neighborhoods, it's coming out of their pocket and they're not getting it.
Well, I don't think you can look at it that right. I think there are neighborhoods that are going to be able to see visually improvements that happen on those corridors. But if we aren't going to do major landscaping down into the neighborhoods, I think that's really where the partnership has to happen with homeowners and other smaller businesses. So we just really can't tackle everything, although it'd be nice, but it's probably not practical. So just one more quote from the committee is that they feel like we have a lot of assets in Hickory, and so we need to not be always wishing that the grass is, or noticing that the grass is greener, or thinking the grass is greener on the other side. We really have a lot of assets, and how do we promote them, and how do we talk them up through even our tourism? You know, how do we say these are the places you can come to in Hickory? And this quote just really talks about, you know, the difference between, I mean, if you look at, you know, even with Ridgeview, those trees have probably been pruned back a little bit since you can't read the sign, but if you look at the landscaping there and then you look here, you know, there's a stark contrast and sort of what that landscaping, how it makes you feel about a space. And so, you know, we can't fix every corner in Hickory, but the plan is to figure out the most effective places to improve Hickory. And just even what landscaping and tree growth does for buffering. So you might not even necessarily think those are good trees. I don't think those are river oaks, but thin oaks, who knows, yeah. So, but that's actually the backside of Hickory Depot, which is across the street from the post office. And so that's just a simple photo just to say, you know, at least there's some screening, and you might not notice the sort of mechanical side of that Hickory Depot building as much. And it just calms, you know, creates a calming effect along the roadway as well when you go through downtown. We have lots of good examples of on-street bike lanes, and this is just one of them. And, you know, places where pedestrians also feel safe, and you can sort of put all three together. But the bottom line is that not every project will be small. There are going to be some big projects that hopefully will happen if Hickory is turning a corner and redevelopment is happening. And so there are going to need to be some partnerships with developers for certain projects. And so part of that is what we hope to have come out of Inspiring Spaces. Because if you have a plan and it outlines particular projects, then people say, okay, the city has some areas that they're wanting to improve. Maybe I can partner and bring up that vacant building, or instead of tearing it down. And that's the kind of thing we're looking for. So just as an example, Lyerly Mill sits right at the main intersection there, just south of the train bridge on 127 at the one-way pairs, and it has sort of a tired look, but it has a lot of historical character, and so there will be somebody that can be creative and think about what can go in that building that hopefully will bring lots of jobs, and just would dress that area up. And so maybe those are the kind of sort of destinations and key points of where we want to improve Hickory. We want to make sure that whatever's done, and land design is particularly interested in this, captures the character of Hickory. So, they've taken just a few photos. It's obviously not comprehensive, and it's just what are the visual clues that tell the story of Hickory? So maybe that's part of something that you jot down on that front page. Again, just at the in that list. Go back to that character. If there's some places that always make you think of this is Hickory, or just that helps them understand the variety of character that then makes up Hickory. And you can see we just have a lot of different places. So we need to not forget the CBCC area of Hickory and out west on 70, that area, and all the way to Longview city limits. There is so much there, and all the way north to Taylorsville, Bethlehem, and then out Springs Road and out to Fairgrove. We just really have a huge footprint for our city limits, and a lot of those areas could be where improvements are made. All right, so let's just pause for a second and take a moment, and if you haven't finished your sheet on the back, or if this is giving you a little more info, just take a minute and fill that in. Not really. On the, we have them on the webpage for vacant buildings, but they're realtors. So let me get you back on cue here. Did you Scott Millard? Scott Millard. All right, so, the whole point of this project is why do we make these improvements? It's not just about that we have just a gorgeous city and we want to just continue to do landscaping. Well, we have some areas that need to be re-energized, and so and we do have a gorgeous city. So it's all those things. It's what you have to do to your home to get it ready to sell. It's what you do to your car when you have noticed that you've left too much stuff in the console or that you've not washed it in a number of months. So it's just about always being in a mode of thinking about making those spaces nicer and also bringing people out of their homes and neighborhoods into public spaces where they can be together and then offering those events. Yes?
Like that brick building that on 127,
Right, Highland.
it's like so there, and do you ever talk to the owners? So then they say, how about you put a few trees in?
Right, they would just rather sell it and let the next person.
So they just throw more money into it and done with it, push it off to the, okay. Because I wondered if you ever approached owners and said, can we do something?
Yeah, no.
What's their responsibility there? Are they responsible for maintaining at least the grass areas?
Well, there's a minimum standard.
The slum landlords, we have a lot of slum landlords, they don't,
Okay.
that hurts.
All right, so we have to not only strengthen our tax base for this, as we do this project, it's related to bringing the whole area up. It's also related to quality of life because we are competing with other cities across North Carolina, nationally. Think about where people would love to live. We want to be in that list, and we need jobs. And then this is also a part of making sure that we don't expect jobs to come to a place that looks tired, run down, left over. We need to always be in that mode of making those improvements. And don't get me wrong, there's so much that's wonderful about Hickory. There are so many neighborhoods that have done outstanding jobs. So it's not all bad news. This is just part of our ongoing improvement. But we have to compete, and we have to compete with a lot of those cities in that crescent that I-40 is now happening at Holler Hosiery. And that's just one building. There's many more that could happen the same way. But it's not just about the old mill buildings, and so even though I love them and I think they're pretty interesting, we have buildings that are built in all different decades, and so we can't keep abandoning these strip centers and these big box areas. We have to keep making sure those are vibrant areas for commerce. And so what SureTape did to move their headquarters into the car dealership building was just another great example of reuse. And they made it look like that's probably where SureTape always has been, in a much more modern way. They dressed that space up and they gave those opportunities for their employees to have easy access to all that commercial and the dining and shopping. And so that's always a good thing for the local economy, even that regional shopping area. And then even the McDonald's on 70 West, they could have let that one go, or the owner could have sold it or shut it down. But he reinvested because he saw what Paramount, Kia, and the Hyundai dealership did, which then also sparked, whether you love it or not, all those car dealerships, they all raised the bar on each other. They said, I've got to compete. I've got so-and-so next door, and I've got to make my area nicer, and then the next guy did it, and the next guy. So then you have sort of a regional car shopping area that's now sort of keeping up with each other in competition then through that private market, and makes that whole area more vibrant. Now, the roadway itself is a little lacks something, and so maybe that's a corridor that gets some treatment too. But just to say, it can happen, this reinvestment can happen successfully in a lot of different areas of Hickory. And it can happen through our public spaces and through what you saw with the Zara Baker Park and all those donations to make that an awesome space for children, the space downtown. And we do that so that we can have opportunities for children like these folks that competed for the bookmark contest. And so we just want to be sure, if you have kids or grandkids, that they think about Hickory in positive ways and want to tell their friends, you know, let's go here or let's go there, and that we haven't let that group down as far as opportunity in the future. And so with that, you know, cities need to have these catalyst projects. For example, the Holler Project just is a place to start for that area. What are the catalyst projects in the different areas of town? Where are they, and how can this Inspiring Spaces project then partner with those catalyst areas? So finally, I've talked your ears off, and I'm sorry about that, but I know you've got good feedback for the group. But this is really our summary, that really this plan builds on what's been done, and what's been done was a lot of hard work through some of the other plans. It also is a way to think about Hickory in a new way, so we're working on old and new, and we're asking for your input. This is not the only way to give it. There's always the website, and there's always a chance to, you know, come to another meeting as we head into the open house meeting forums in January. Part of this project then is also when council has to think about how does it get funded. You know, are there new dollars, and where do they come from? So it's not something that we expect the existing departments to just absorb, because we really don't have that. This is something that is where you have to identify a separate source of funding. So that's out there to be talked about. And so really it's about a 10-year project. So I wouldn't want you to think, well, this is all going to happen in 2 years. And you know, these plans, they take a little while, but if like me, you could go and see with some signage that says this was an Inspiring Spaces project, you could see some of that in different parts of town over the next 5 years, then you would know, okay, you know, those dollars that went to that project were spent on things that I now enjoy and do on a regular basis. And so that's our goal. Yes, ma'am.
I know, I'm just asking some questions.
That's all right.
Mine's just where my brain works. Well, I'm looking at like certain areas of Hickory, and you know, you talk about funding, so my mind goes, well, taxes, revenue, raise this and that. Well, I think there might be some problem with certain areas that are wealthier, that are going to benefit from this, where some of the other neighborhoods that are demographically, you know, they're economically depressed, and they're not necessarily going to be benefiting from the Inspiring Spaces, and there might be a little bit of conflict there.
Well,
so how would you balance that out? Well,
I think that we have said throughout this project that the improvements happen in multiple areas of town. And so the benefit is for everyone who wants to get outside and use those spaces. There won't be a project that gets done that says it's only for X group. These are public areas, so they're always available. And as far as, you know, who pays more or who pays less, you know, that's just a decision that the council will take up. But I mean, I think the goal is that we all need to contribute to making that improvement. And maybe if certain areas can do more with donations for certain public art or particular playground equipment, maybe that's a way they give more, but that doesn't mean that those areas are restricted. It's really about public spaces everywhere that people can access, no matter which neighborhood.